like to welcome you to the introduction of the next generation of science standards. There certainly is a lot of interest evident in the room. So my name is Markle. I'm the Assistant Dean for K-12 Outreach in the College of Education here at Michigan State. And I thank you all for being here. I know it was a long drive and a rainy morning, and just really reflects the dedication that science teachers have and science educators have to their subject area. This morning we'll learn more about the context of the standards and more about the standards themselves. This afternoon you'll have the opportunity to attend 2 breakout sessions, and we have today over 800 people in the room. It's always going to be a challenge to stay right on time, but I know that this group can do it. I'd really like to thank all the people who worked to make today possible. Thanks to Dr. Joe Krajcik, who you will be meeting in a few minutes, Director of Create for STEM, and for his leadership in this work, and to his staff, especially Reedy Bear and Sue Carpenter. Also, Sue Kelly, the coordinator of the development of the NGSS standards from the Michigan Department of Education, has also provided significant leadership in all aspects of this work. I'd also like to extend my thanks to my K-12 outreach staff, especially Megan Papoy and Melissa Staub for their work in organizing the conference along with their colleagues in Create, and to our incredible tech team headed up by Ken Durbin. I also want to thank our doctoral students for providing directions to various places in the building. Now, more about today. As I just mentioned, the focus will be on learning more about the standards and their content. You'll have the opportunity this morning to work at your tables with a facilitator who will be circling around 3 or 4 tables. And I'd like right now to ask those facilitators to stand up so you know who the facilitators are around the room. Okay, these are the folks. As they wander around and sit down at your table, you will know what they are doing. Since we have 800 people or more in the room, individual questions are somewhat difficult to ask. And so we have cards on your table. We ask you to, if you have a question throughout the morning, to write it on the card and to bring it up to the front table. During lunch, we will organize these cards, and our panel at the end of the day will try to answer the major themes that emerge from your questions. There will also be an online question-answer site, and your questions will serve as the subjects for what those questions and responses are. Some other things you need to know. Restrooms are located to the left as you go out the door. The women's is on the main floor. The men's is on the lower floor. Also, there are restrooms when you came in from the parking area, and there are also some more restrooms somewhere on the lower level. At noon, you will pick up a box lunch across the hall where you had your breakfast, and you may take your box lunch, you may bring it back in this room or take it anywhere on the main floor here in the Kellogg Center. If the weather's good, they're going to, if the weather improves, which we hope it does, they will open the east patio and you can eat outside. If you want CEUs, for some of you who came in, you must sign in and sign out in the CEU book, and you will not get CEUs unless you sign that book, both in and out. If you did not get a badge, given the number of people we had coming in at one time, please stop down during the lunch hour and we will get you a badge. I just talked about the support for this conference and people who have worked hard on it. But support for this conference also comes from our Dean's office. And so at this time, I would like to introduce to you Donna Heller, the Dean of the College of Education at Michigan State, and a professor of higher ed, adult, and lifelong education. Dean Heller came to us about a year ago from Penn State University, where he was director of the Center for the Study of Higher Education. He also held a faculty appointment at the University of Michigan. His teaching and award-winning research emphasizes educational economics with a primary focus on the issues of college access, and particularly for low-income and minority students. He has testified, he's considered an expert in higher education policy issues, and has testified in front of congressional committees, state legislators, and court cases where he was the expert witness. And so it's really a pleasure for me to, and honor, to welcome to the podium Dean Don Heller.
Thank you, Barbara. Good morning, and thanks for that flattering introduction. It's a pleasure to be here today to welcome you to Michigan State University in this beautiful spring weather and the Create for STEM Institute's rollout of the Next Generation Science Standards. These standards, along with the Common Core State standards previously adopted in Michigan, will help to ensure that tomorrow's students will complete their K-12 educations college and career ready. While these standards are necessary to ensure that the next generation of students is prepared for the next stage of their lives, the standards themselves are not sufficient to ensure this. The missing ingredient is you, the teachers and administrators in the audience and around the state who will be responsible for implementing these standards. You are the critical linchpin that will make the rollout of these standards successful in our state. In the just over 1 year that I've been in the position of Dean of the College of Education here at Michigan State, I have spent much time observing and engaging with politicians and policymakers in Lansing around educational policy issues. As I'm sure you are all aware, there has been a flurry of legislation introduced that would, in some cases, radically change the K-12 educational system in our state. Just last week, in fact, I was in Lansing testifying against one more of these educational reform bills being considered by the House Education Committee. This bill, HB 4625, would actually prohibit school districts from using length of experience or educational attainment, with some minor exceptions, as a criterion for compensating teachers. Even though all but one of the approximately dozen witnesses at that hearing spoke against this legislation, the bill was passed out of committee on a party line vote. Now think about this. While we all know that experience and further education makes for better teachers, some members of the legislature wish to prohibit school districts from rewarding teachers for staying in the profession longer and for gaining more education. There is something many of these legislators in Lansing have not yet figured out. You cannot improve education in our state by attacking teachers, teacher unions, and the teaching profession. Leave the educational decisions to the people with the training, expertise, and local knowledge, and stop meddling. The 800 of you here today understand that, and we need to get that message across to our legislators in Lansing. Now, as I stated earlier, you are the critical component of a successful implementation of the Next Generation Science Standards in the Common Core. Without you and your expertise, the standards will fail to make our students more ready for post-secondary education and the workforce. Now, here in the College of Education, we are changing our teacher education programs to educate our students about these new standards. But for every one teacher we graduate each year, there are over 200 existing teachers around the state of Michigan already in the workforce who will need to be trained in the implementation of these standards. So professional development, including convenings like this one today, will be an important part of our efforts. I hope that today's conference will be helpful to all of you, and I wish you good luck as you continue your valuable contributions to education in Michigan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dean Heller. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Joe Krajcik, Director of Create for STEM Institute and a faculty member in science education. Dr. Krajcik is a former high school chemistry and physical science teacher. He spent 21 years at the University of Michigan before coming to MSU in 2011. He has spent his career working with science teachers to reform science teaching practices, to promote students' engagement in learning and in science. He is a fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science and has served as president of the National Association for Research in Science Teaching and has received their Distinguished Achievement Award. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Joe Frazier.
Thank you, Barbara, for those very kind remarks. I am actually really pleased to be here today. And actually, I'm blown away at the reception of all the people that are here. I think it really shows, as was mentioned earlier, the dedication of the science teachers and science educators in our state really to improve the teaching and learning of science. So I'm very impressed. You should be very pleased and excited to be here. I think it's really an important day for us as a state to move forward, as Don said, to ensure that our children are prepared for the workforce and prepared for their next stages of education. With that, I'm going to invite up to the stage two people who actually have been instrumental in working through the next generation of science standards. I think that many of you know that our state was one of the 26 lead states, but actually one of the original 6 lead states. Originally, there were supposed to be 6 lead states that was going to work with the leadership team of the next generation of science standards and achieve to really give careful feedback. But there was such a strong effort that actually 26 states actually ended up being invited. But Michigan was actually one of the original. And the feedback that we received from many of you has just been really important in trying to modify what was going on, how these standards look. And 2 people who were really instrumental in that, and I think many of you know these people. One is Robby Cramer, the Executive Director of Michigan Science Teachers Association. So Robby, coming up. And the other person is Larry Casler, who's the Executive Director of the Michigan Math and Science Center Network. Right? So I actually first met Robby and Larry this last year as we worked on the next generation of science standards and also thinking about scaling this effort up in our state. It's been a real pleasure to get to know them and realize their dedication towards science education.
Good morning. I'm Robby Cramer, and I'm with MSTA. The Michigan Science Teachers Association has been an active workforce in supporting and helping to facilitate both the internal and external review of the next generation science standards. Last year, our state conference had a focus on the framework, and we had a lot of sessions that explained what this was about, what might this look like in boot camps at that high school, middle, and elementary level. We are very, very pleased to be actively a part of introducing these standards today. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Larry Casler. I'm Executive Director of the Michigan Math and Science Center Network. And I want to assure you that the network, of which, if you would raise your hand, directors, we have a lot of directors here today. Raise your hands, around and about. We are fully committed into immersing ourselves into the professional development that's obviously going to be a huge need as we move forward. We've also started at the same time a companion group called our STEM Partnership. And the STEM Partnership, I know we have several members here that are also involved in the STEM hubs. And the STEM Partnership will be working hand in hand along those lines to try and make those connections between our new science standards and the world of work. So thank you very much for being here today.